Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Here I am in the dark, as we all are. And there I am. And my last show, that was like a telethon there. It was, at least 4 or 5 hours, maybe 3 hours. How many hours? I don't know. But it was very diverse. I talked to a lot of people on the phone. I talked about a lot of different things. And, just like this image right here, I have no idea what I'm doing, right? And so, and John he watched the whole thing, and he would come down every now and then and jump in and do things and say things and, somewhat disruptive, but no more than any other time. John, that's kind of what he is. And the last time he came down and said some things, and then he said something, and then the little hockey puck of a spy started putting out music in a foreign language. I have no idea what it was. And I went over to it and said, "Hey, turn this off. Hockey puck, shut up." And it did. So it played it for all of, I don't know, less than a minute. Anyway, I didn't think anything of it because it was in a foreign language. I had no idea what it was saying or who it was. And, then the show went up, and then a few minutes past that, it said, copyright, blah, 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 right? So, A, I didn't do it. I didn't consciously do it. Didn't think about doing it. John said something to the hockey puck, and it spat out the thing. And then, whether John does things like, I don't know, I must have 20 shows that were on, that's kind of interesting, that were on his channel. And not all of them have a link to my channel, right? And he calls it Dream Time with Al, right? And that's not, my name of my show is Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, right? And again, I do this show not to, become rich and famous, to be competitive with anybody, I don't compare myself to anybody, right? And pretty much there is nobody like me. And a number of times I've worked for certain people and been in certain places, and people would comment, Al, we love you, but, if there was more of you, we'd have to kill you. Meaning, I'm not a threat, And, I haven't even, I thought I was getting towards 700 subscribers, and, I'm really at 494, right? It's like very strange. But anyway, it's basically irrelevant because, I'm doing this because what else have I got to do? Not much. And, not many people watch this. I'm not, YouTube let me do that because I'm like the loyal opposition, I'm not against the hidden hand. I'm not against the state. I'm not against any of this. What I want is, and what I serve is love's co-creation. And I know that, it's going to be, we will be what we will be, right? And things will turn out the way they are. Because we're right on this little precipice, as I was saying earlier in the last show, a few hours ago, that we're right on this very interesting precipice that all of nothing's really any different than, what has been around for all of recorded history. And humanity's been around a lot longer than recorded history. And there are a lot of civilizations that, they just discovered um, one in the, Amazon after all the illegal guys going after gold and trees stumbled on this city out in the middle of the Amazon that no one even knew existed. But once they started looking at it, it was humongous. And they estimated, they had, water and septic and large thoroughfares and large foundations to large buildings and many buildings to the left and many underground facilities. But this facility had at least 1 million people there, right? So, everyone thinks we are the pinnacle of human evolution, right? First of all, even Darwin realized that, evolution was a joke. He did that because he had spent his whole life doing all this research and investigating things, and he was a very religious man. And so he wrote this, um, theory to basically make sure that people remembered who he was after he was dead, because he was kind of no one really knew who, he had no fame and riches or anything. He was you know, a semi-bureaucratic guy working, kind of like me in a lot of strange ways, and that he too was a itinerant scholar, right? And so, but he was more attached to the, academia, to the, he wanted to be part of the club, you know. I forgot who said that. In any club that would want me in it, I wouldn't want to join. I think it was Harpo Marx. One of the Marx brothers said it. Anyway, so the bottom line of all this is that we, in Dante's, no, in Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times, the worst of times. We're all going to heaven, we're all going the other way. And that's kind of where humanity is. That's the beauty of Dickens. I mean, everything he's written is pretty relevant to today. Christmas Carol, Tale of Two Cities, even Great Expectations and David Copperfield and his other novels, which were written for newspapers, so that's why they're so long. It's hard to write a long book, it really is. But if you're writing, 500-600 words every day for a newspaper, and the story goes on for a year or two, because it's popular, and your boss says, just keep writing this shit, so it's not hard to get, 400 or 500 pages. So anyway, I mean, I've written 15 novels so far, and I've written them because I enjoyed writing them, right? I have no great expectations that, I can barely, because they're all in Google. Google won't let me send them to anybody unless they have Google email. I can't. I mean, I can send a Google Doc, but I have to reconfigure it and do all this crazy crap that I can't even do. So, I'm leaving it up to God, because that's who I serve, and I don't like using the word God. Love is the word I use. I am here in service to love's co-creation, right? In the Bible, when, the burning bush meets Moses, and burning bush says, hey, go get the Hebrew nation out of Egypt, right? Set them free. And now, the burning bush wasn't talking like the Hebrew nation was, encapsulated in Egypt, where like slaves cleaning toilets. No, the Israel nation was, at the time, they were middle managers. They were bankers and doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs, and they represented, and took care of and manifested the empire for the pharaoh, right? So they were, upper middle class, what a lawyer would be, what a banker would be, right? And pretty much the Jews have held that position all through, at least, European or other people's histories, right? So the Burning Bush said, go set them free from that, from materialism, because they were losing their way. And as we are losing our way in materialism, right? And our religions have turned into materialism because, uh, John's a good example. Praise God, praise Jesus, praise God, praise Jesus. That's like, how many times can you say it? It's worth a token to get into the gated community of heaven, And again, all these words mean something else. Every English word that is spelled is a spell. It actually is a spell, you know. That's why Hebrew, every letter is a number, and that's why they read it with a pointer. That's why it's in a scroll that rolls out. Whereas you read the Bible, it's in pages, and it breaks it up. It disconnects you from the Word, right? And the New Testament or the King James Bible is like a book that was written by monkeys with typewriters, right? So it's a whole different thing. And what we have to realize that we are not our mud puppet bodies. These are avatars, right? And our life, that we're in a sandbox. We never left the friggin' Garden of Eden. We're still here, and we're just turning it into a junkyard, right? But that's okay because this is our little material, sandbox to learn to be a spirit, to remember what it's about. And that's what I'm here to do, is to serve that, right? And whether one person's watching or a billion people watch this, it doesn't matter because I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. The alchemy, turning base metals into gold, right? What is that? Our bodies are the base metals, and we're a bag of water with a bunch of trace elements in it, right? That's animated by the prana, which is the love of co-creation, right? And we are grounded to chi, right? All our relations, right? So what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? It's up to us. You are the decider. I'm the decider, I came to John because I realized that he needed help. When I sold him the place, he showed up. I probably couldn't have sold it to anybody other than him, right? And he came here, and he is, he now thinks this is his way out from his parents and way to go to California and be a big star, way to get his family back. No, and I've come here to assist him because he has to decide this. He has to. I mean, he hasn't been with his family for 10 years, right? They were here for 4 years before they left and went back to Texas, and they've been in Texas 5 or 6 years, right? So he hasn't really been with his family in all of those years, right? He's a father, a parent to two boys, right? And he continually talks, the most important thing is to get my family back, it's like someone took it away from him. No, he drove them away by his actions. And that's why I keep calling him the canary in the coal mine, because he really does shows us the good, bad, and the ugly of what to be or not to be as a human being, right? Because he is a good guy and in his heart. But, everybody is, And it's when we allow the outside material world to influence to the point where, as the great philosopher said, it is the downturn of humanity when humanity does evil to do right. You can never do evil to do right. You have to be consciously intent to do your best to serve love's co-creation. You're not perfect, you can't get it all right, but you can do your best. That's all you got to do. So that's what I do, and every day in every way I do my best to bring the peace of the earth, right? And so I am that little pebble being dropped in the World Wide Web, sending out vibrations. That's the shamanic side of this show, right? That's what I do these shows as shamanic experiences, right? And to see where you're going to go with that, right? And the burning bush, when Moses asked the burning bush its name and what it's doing here, burning bush said, "I am." He didn't say, "I am who I am," because only Popeye says that. He says, "I am a work in progress, and you," meaning humanity, "is my reflection. I get to see what I am doing by what you do." And that's why in the Old Testament, God was this wrathful kind of jerk, You get upset, right? You would think an omnipotent, all-knowing creator wouldn't get upset because it created, there is no real evil because, if you believe in God, God created everything. So God created evil, right? Why did God create evil? Well, he didn't. He gave us a free will that allows us to choose to be good or be bad, right? And that's what, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that's what it is. And so in essence, there is no good or evil, right? But, we were given the 10 Commandments. I think there were 20. And when Moses was coming off the hill, he slipped, like I did today. I took a real fall. And, all I am is a little sore, but I could have easily killed myself. I could have easily broke like a China doll, but I didn't because someone was looking out for me, Because I am here to do that 11% that I shook love's hand before I was incarnated, saying, "Yep, I'll be your boy. I'll be your lucky bastard. I'll come in and do my best, And so that's, where we're at. That's what's going on. And so whatever Google says, whatever YouTube says, oh, who's here? Who was that? My glasses on. Well, my glasses. Glasses, where we got? Okay. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Good evening, Bob. Eddie, wishing you the best. Thanks, Edward. I appreciate that. Did you watch the show an hour or so ago? What did you think of all that? That was a Jerry Lou's telethon there. 18 minutes and 49 seconds into the show. 2 people watching, 1 thumbs up. Thank you all. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Bob. Let's see, what does this do? Crush? What's Crush look like? That looks interesting. Glow? What does Glow look like? No, not much. State? No. Dawn? Okay. Ooh, Bubble Land. Oh, it's really, the bubbles are lighting me up. Love the bubbles because you can kind of see when we adjust them. What does this one do? How about that one? That's very strange. Glamour. Ooh, I look glamorous, don't I? 8mm. Oh, not so much. Sepia? No, not even. Silver? No. Haunt. Oh, that's a little haunting. Yeah, it's a bit much. Mm. Well, maybe I'll just. I mean, that's kind of fun. Oops. Can't put your hand in front of the lens there. So, it's about 12:30, pushing towards 1 a.m. And so, as I was saying, what the frack, you know, it's, the Russian Ukraine war will end in one of two things: total nuclear annihilation, right? Because that would actually be relatively easy to do, and or I missed earlier, and well, if YouTube doesn't take it down, you can go and watch it. I talked to a number of people on the phone, a number of my friends. I haven't been able to, I don't just call somebody up and not tell them that they're, live on the World Wide Web. Everyone who's part of the show knows this. But there are other people, I have friends who, over the years, I've been in so many different conferences and worked for, looking at things for people. Um, I wouldn't quite call myself an intelligence guy or even an intelligent guy, but I have a skill set of looking at things in a way that most people don't. And I can abridge um, certain perspectives in a way that other people can take what I observe and go, well, I never thought of that. That's interesting. So I've had access to things and experiences and situations that most people don't have. So I have a interesting point of view. I mean, when I worked out in the Southwest, in the New Mexico, Nevada, what's the other Nexus state? Those four corner states. I worked on a lot of different things that, I worked on a lot of what were known DUMBs, deep underground military bases, but, I didn't really. I was working on power supplies, right? I was working on transformers. I was working on transmission facilities. And they were not part of those things, but their facilities were so unorthodox and, not the usual situation that I said, I could extrapolate into, I wonder what this is, right? So that's as close as I got it, and I would do my job well because, conscious intent. I, never screwed. I just focused on the job at hand and did my best and fulfilled what was needed. And I would be approached by many saying, that was a great job. We'd love to, have you join the firm. We'd love to have you, if you, and we see that you're interested in X, Y, and Z, and we could give you access to that. If you just join, you'd have to sign this contract and, blah, 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 blah. And here you have to draw blood and, put it on the pit. I said, sorry, I'm not going there. So I never did. I never really, went in with both feet. I would do my best with what I was given at hand, and that's what I would do. I would press or push or try to become A-lister or any of that, right? But people would talk to me, when I'd be there, right? I was the kind of guy that people could talk to me, and I wouldn't, spill the beans, and I would never really repeat what they said, right? But I would give them perspectives again, why I was there in the first place. But these other people who weren't part of that, but were in the community would talk to me, and I would give them insights that wow, I never thought of that. And then they go back and do the thing, and it would push them forward. And my hand is getting tired. My hand's just right in front of the camera. Let's see, how can I put this thing so I don't have to support it? There we go. And so the powers that be, they know what's going on with everything. And when morons, well, no one can keep a secret. Well, that's not true. A lot of people can keep secrets, right? And especially institutions and facilities that have a, agenda. If you have an agenda, you can keep secrets. So I have no agenda except to serve love's co-creation. So pretty much I have no secrets, right? And again, I tell you, don't believe a word I say, and everything I tell you is a story, right? So pretty much don't believe anything I say. But a lot of people talk to me, and so there are there are a number of scholastics who are always bugging me. And I played one guy who thinks of himself as that, as an expert on this, right? And I, bring him on the show every now and then because he gets so twisted because, I'm just a cheeky monkey, right? So I know a lot about a lot of stuff, right? And I can, formulate theories, and I can perceive strategies. These are some of my skill sets. And when I bring them forth in a discussion with folks like this guy, and he was on 3 or 4 shows ago the other night, maybe 4 shows, and we always talk about this, that, and the other thing. We always kind of talk about. He always brings the subject around either one or two things: his expertise on the Mideast and Russia and Ukraine, and he's pretty much a Scott Ritter. I mean, whatever Scott Ritter says, that's what he says is, take it to the bank. And I constantly talk about the hidden hand, and that this war, the Ukraine war, is a scripted war to bring forth, the unipolar, transnational, fascist state. I mean, it's already here. It's an element of, the high table and what's going on and has been going on since, recorded history. And you go, well, if they've been doing this for, since recorded history, which is, give it, somewhere between 300,000 and 60,000 years. But that, humanity as the unit we are has been here probably 1 million years, right? And that's how many different civilizations have grown and fallen apart. And we've had, the war, the situation, the movie Star Wars, that's our solar system, the asteroid belt is, the Orc belt. That was a planet. That was the center planet of the bureaucracy of that empire. And it was blown up by the Death Star. And the Death Star was parked in our orbit because before the moon was there, which is the Death Star, our orbital and gravitational motif was very wonky, and we were more or less a mud. We would go between being a ice cube and a mud pit, right? And there was life forms on it, but mostly reptilian and other forms. And once the moon was parked there and steadied out our gravitational field and our dynamics of that sort, and stuck a magnetic belt that would protect the life form that was placed here, us, and all our relations, and that's pretty obvious. But no, it's not advertised. It's not advertised in any religion. It's not advertised in any political structure because it would give too much food for thought for the average mud puppet to go, I wonder what that's about. And who am I? And what am I doing here? We do not have that kind of introspection, I do that all the time. And that's at least, everything I do my best, right? So that's conscious intent, right? And conscious awareness. And with those two, I have a lot of retrospection on what am I doing here, right? And so, every actions I take, I kind of think, what am I doing here? Not just blindly going, oh, this is my job, or this is what I'm doing. Well, I want to do this, and because most times when you say I want to do this, it's only that which you have been told to think you want to do, right? Pretty much. Ooh, I want to live in a bubble world. There I am in a bubble world. Look, I'm in a bubble world. You can see my bubble world. Let's see. I missed earlier. Wishing you the best. Thanks, Ed. Edward, how are you doing? Have you learned from your trials? When you're under the fire, when you're walking through the flames, that's when you can really learn something, right? And everything that comes into your life, you put in the juxtaposition. What did I learn from that? Am I going to do that again, or am I not going to do that again, or what's going on, right? But let's see. This is Pop. What does Pop look like? Pop looks like nothing. Blush. Am I blushing? No. Normal? Being, I'm going back to bubble world. Because it reflects well on my glasses there. So, my hand keeps falling asleep. Put it there. That's better. So, let's see how much. Let's see. It's 1:30. This thing's almost all charged up. I get close enough, it lights me up. The bubbles light me up. So, whatever YouTube does, it's irrelevant. It's whatever Google does, it's irrelevant. Whatever any of those tech morons do, it's irrelevant because they're here for such a fleeting time. I mean, MySpace used to be the Facebook. Facebook is giving way to TikTok. TikTok will, God knows what will take over TikTok. Well, probably, virtual reality. That's where they want to push humanity into virtual reality so they can define exactly everything that we are and do. Right? And so they don't have to worry about us. If they are defining the reality, and it will be, done through the algorithms of figuring out what is the most convenient and the most entertaining and the most, stimulating for your erogenous zone, So, I mean, the thing that gave the real push or motivation for the internet to become a, economic juggernaut was porn. Because before porn, nobody looked at nobody even knew what the internet was, right? No one had a phone that could show you porn. No one had a, laptop or desktop that could show you porn. But once porn came on, man, everyone got themselves a smartphone or got themselves a laptop or a desktop or any of the above. So, and what is porn but a useless distraction, right? Because, real intimacy is more than just friction of erogenous zones, but men are driven by visual stimulation and women are driven by real stimulation, like physical stimulation, right? Women are the more physical ones than guys. Guys really aren't. Guys, if they were, they wouldn't fall asleep right after they came, So, and 35 minutes and 31 seconds. Anyway, so it's, next, 5 years. Here's my crystal ball take for you. And here it is the last few days of January. And January is the year of telling you what's going to happen this year. So pretty much it'll be obvious that Russia and China have already gone down the drain. And it's just about 5 years before they eat themselves, right? China is not the threat. This is not the century for China because their demographics are against them. They have no food to feed. They import all their food. They import all their energy. They are not there's one man in charge, Zim. He gets no information because he doesn't want anybody to tell him bad information. So he micromanages, 1 point something billion people, and they're getting pissed off about it. And there's at least 58 different separate racial groups that hate each other. And at a certain point, being in a little apartment watching a TV won't be anything groovier than being out there in the woods eating dirt, which is where they were 40 years ago. So they are either just organically going to self-implode, or people will say, we have to, we're getting rid of this guy and we're getting rid of the CCP and we're going to try something different, right? And if they do that, then China could within 50 years be something interesting, right? And if they are interesting and give an environment for the individual to be all they can be rather than just a robot, and China also is a good example of, oh, look at that, I'm wearing glasses. What China is today is a cardboard cutout of what the hidden hand wants, the white Anglo-Saxon world to be, right? And really, that's so freaking boring. So China ain't got to be around. Like I said, this year we will see the demise, the finality of of Russia and of China, right? It's not like they're going away or they're going to be no longer here, but the Putin-esque, CCP, world domination, imperial site, right? And the United States will also have a comeuppance. I mean, see, the United States it's the most fertile place, makes most of the food of the world. And people don't realize, when NAFTA occurred, it just didn't make an economic, grouping. No, it legally made Canada, the United States, and Mexico one country. And the Mexican worker is like the productivity of one Mexican worker is equal to the productivity of 16 Chinese workers. It's not that the Chinese people are lazy or anything above. No. It's just their organizational structure is actually under sin. There is no place for, entrepreneurship or individuals say, maybe we could do it better this way, right? So everything's top down, and it's from one guy. Z's micromanaging, 1 point something billion people, right? Now, the two countries that are up and comers that are very interesting is India and Brazil. Now, if Brazil I lived there for almost a year, and the people of Brazil are really amazing folk, right? So if they were just given half a chance to be all they could be, that place would take off, right? But they have like barbecued, they've gone after their their treasure for chump change, right? And Bolsonaro, he was just a poster boy put in there by the hidden hand to basically screw that it was at a point where if they had to ease up on their extraction. But Bolsonaro tripled down. I mean, in just his 4 years, they took more stuff out of the ground and from people than they have in the last almost 20 years. So, that's a problem with them, right? That puts them kind of behind the eight ball. I don't know if they'll be able to get out from underneath that. The other thing is India. India is really just because where they're set and they can kind of feed themselves, they have really spent a lot of energy on educating their people and instead of what China did, trying to, send their people up to be taught and steal stuff from the places they were studying at. India has educated its people and then basically sent them around the world to, go do IT for everybody else, right? So it's not so much they're stealing stuff, they're integrating India into the rest of the technological world, right? In a way that's very interesting, right? Now, Modi is a guy. If they had a more Modi is very what's the right word? Prejudice. I think that might be the word. When I say to somebody, you're pretty prejudiced. They go, well, I have black friends, and no, that's not prejudice. That's racist. Being prejudiced means you believe in what you think you know and the superiority of your what you think you know and how that makes you special, right? And so that is a real recipe for suicide, socially, intellectually, spiritually. And so Modi has a big dose of that now, and his party has a big dose of that. Now, maybe that's a self-motivating thing of the hidden hand to knock India down a few pegs so they aren't, because just where they're located. China, oh, we have 700-ship Navy. Yeah, but all those boats can't go more than 400 miles away from the gas pump, The U.S. Navy, why the U.S. Navy is so amazing is that its logistics is across the planet, right? They're the only Navy that can resupply and refuel their aircraft carrier group. It's an aircraft carrier, and now we're building super aircraft carriers. The Nimitz were bigger and better than anything anybody had or has today, and now we're building the Ford class, which is like 20 times bigger and more amazing than the Nimitz class, right? Nuclear power can stay out there forever. Don't need gas or oil. And all its, stores, its supplies can be reconfigured and resupplied out at the sea, right? Like in the middle of a hurricane. And there is no Navy. So China cannot resupply or refuel its ships as they'll run out of gas before they get to Taiwan, right? And yes, they have 700 ships, but they're these little teeny things, not even, they do not have a single ship that is a Barclay class destroyer, right? One of those could, take out half of, a flotilla that the CCP puts up, right? And Japan, you know, everyone thinks Japan's this little island, but they're the third richest country on the planet. They have the second highest level of GDP than anybody, right? More than Russia, more than China. China's size, yes, sells a lot of shit, and that's what they sell, shit, right? Japan sells high end. The three people who make high end chips: the United States, Japan, and Taiwan, right? And people going, oh, China's going to have artificial intelligence, and that's blah blah blah. No, people from the Japanese are making robots that look like you can't tell that they're not human beings, right? So, and the United States has robots. I mean, go on YouTube and look at, I forget the name of the company, but they have robots that are killing machines. I mean, anthropomorphized killing machines. I mean, two legs, two arms, head, a torso, and it can run faster all day long than a gazelle, right? It can shoot, and hit its target in a death way every time it pulls the trigger, right? And it's virtually indestructible. There's some unbelievable, these guys, who work for this company, they got this one robot, they hand her a machine gun and go bang, 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 bang. He hits every target, right? They hit it with a sledgehammer in the head, knocks him over. He gets up and takes the gun up, and he doesn't shoot them. He shoots the targets again. Bang, 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 right? And it's pretty, it's the Terminator, right? They already got it, right? And it can do triple somersaults and lands on its feet. It can and cartwheel down staircases. It can carry half a ton of weight. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on, right? And so, and it's interactive and connected through a matrix. So it has total access, total recall of everything. Every information has total machine learning, and they got that already. They can feel this shit out in the field. Russia can't, China can't. Taiwan makes super high-end chips, right? Mostly for your cell phone and whatever high-end devices. And so, and the other interesting thing, 40% of all the investment in industry and manufacturing of the high-end technology that China makes is owned, operated, and controlled by Taiwan. Taiwan is a volcanic rock, right? It only has 9 beaches that are only 5 or 6 miles long. There is no place for the Chinese to land a flotilla to attack, to invade Taiwan. And all of those beaches are right up against these big, rainforests. And that's what Taiwan is. It's a mountainous, volcanic rock island covered in rainforests. And yes, its industrial sites are specific, and they have been preparing 75 years for the war with China because they were China. They were in charge of China. They were, when the UN was started, the guys who were on Taiwan were recognized as the government of China, right? Up, for 10 years, they were the guys of the UN. China, the other China, Mao's China, it wasn't even there. So, I mean, it's just look at our own. No one even knows our own history for the last 100 years. No one understands. Everyone's going on how tell the media. Our media was always owned, and therefore was always propaganda. There's this thing called yellow journalism. What was that? That was Pulitzer and Hearst lying about everything. That's how we got, Pulitzer and Hearst caused us to have, the Spanish-American War, because they represented the political structure that wanted to, have America push past South America. The Spanish American War, people don't realize that's how we got, the Pacific, you know, part of the United States. We almost turned the Philippines into a state, not just Hawaii, but the Philippines were going to be a state, you know. They were so Americanized, That's why the Japanese invaded, right? And first they took all of Asia, China and Southeast Asia and all that stuff. And then when we started to put squeeze on them, they said, well, and they used their own psychology against us. They didn't realize Americans, they don't give, they don't get upset with being embarrassed. They just go and kill you, right? So, and don't really, they go, it's not personal. It was just business. I mean, that scene from The Godfather, So anyway, so that's where we are. We're at this very interesting point where we will either, and humanity within, the juxtaposition of who we are. We've done this already 6 times already. We've had 6 times where we, within our cultural and historical reference of the last 60,000 years, have wiped ourselves out, right? I mean, we have found, nuclear glass all around the world, all, like where the Sphinx is in Egypt, right? It was built in a rainforest. They can tell because at the base, the foundation of the thing has been worn away by rain, and it's a desert, right? So there are all of these very interesting things that the scholastics don't want to talk about because it's not in the textbook, right? And that's why I had a pretty good career for about 15 years. So looking at stuff outside the textbook world, right? And so that's what I did. And I did it because I enjoyed doing it. And they paid me pretty well, right? And still allowed me to do other stuff, allowed me to still do electric work, allowed me to still be an artist, allowed me to still do lots of different things. And that's what you should do as a human being. My whole career, why I've had such an amazing life, is that I have basically been able to work at things that I enjoyed to work at, that I didn't, John goes on and on about how he hates working in real estate, working for his parents. He just wants to get out of, he thinks if he gets out of, the East, Virginia, and goes to California, that everything will be fine. Well, he, just the time I've known him, he's gone to California to be in California 4 different times. All I did was stay in a motel and eat, uh, food brought to him by Uber and, watch television or, whatever he did there. But he didn't even go out and talk to people or find I mean, if he wants to move to California and be in the movie industry, he's going to have to go get a job in the movie industry. And they're not going to just say, oh, we want you to star in a movie. Oh, we want you to, have a $100 million budget and make a movie. No, sorry. The movies he made, they're kind of interesting. They're kind of entertaining, but the real skill of movie making in Hollywood is not so much that you can point a camera at something and get people to run around and follow a script and a storyboard. No, it is the logistics. It's like going to war of how to move all of this equipment and people and resources and this to bring forth magic. Why do they call it Hollywood? Because every magic wand is made out of Hollywood. And they call it Hollywood magic, And John's movies aren't magical. They're entertaining of sorts, But he had them, he sold them off to a guy who's supposed to put them on the internet and sell DVDs, stuff like that. He's made a few dollars, right? And all the movies he basically put on his credit card and his parents paid for, right? And so, his parents, his father is, a nuts and bolts guy. And so he sees his son who's, is in his 40s. And by the time he was in his 40s. He had already gone to college, become a teacher, worked hard enough as a teacher to get to that sweet spot of not putting in 20 years, but putting in half of that and getting somewhat of retirement and having a backup still to do that job so he'd go do other stuff that he thought he could make money at, which was real estate, right? And he kind of enjoyed it. He saw it as a kind of a game, right? And he could do it with his wife, and he enjoyed doing it with his wife, right? And he tried to involve his son, but his son just saw it as a prison sentence, you know? Now I understand that. All of my brothers and sisters worked for my father, and they got paid pretty well, and they got a lifestyle and a direction of where they are now. But they saw it as hampering. That's why I didn't do that. I did my own thing. And that's a very interesting thing. If you want a sense of stability, a sense of of security, and that's all it is. It's an illusion of security. You want the illusion of security, you have to do the same thing over and over and over again every day, right? And I could do that being an electrician, but I would make a nice chunk of change, and I didn't go by, at certain times I did do that, but most of my career as an electrician, I would work, because I always enjoyed being an electrician, right? So I'd work as an electrician, and I'd make a chunk of change, and then I go take a trip. I go, and not just like to California or Florida. No, I would go all over the world, right? And stay there because my skill set as an electrician, I did it all around the world. Electricity is electricity, right? And I could do it wherever I was. Even if I couldn't speak their language, I could still be an electrician. And people go, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. Even though he grunts and draws pictures and points and he looks like a monkey. And that allowed me to live in Europe, for years. It allowed me to live in Asia for years. It allowed me to live in Australia for years, right? And so, and I learned, all of that traveling taught me more about myself because I was able to put myself juxtaposition with the community I was with, right? And now, John, again, I keep calling him the poster boy of American culture or the canary in the coal mine of materialism. And because he constantly does the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different outcome. No. Now, if he's really concerned about his kids, he would go there and be with his kids. He could do that, But he goes down, for the 8 years I've known him, he's gone down there maybe 5 to 10 times. And he hasn't lasted there for more than a few weeks, right? And he just alienates them when he's there because instead of him being who his internal real self is, he's self-conscious and anxious and just can't interact, right? And the more you're anxious and can't interact amongst humans and you don't say, why is this happening? How can I change? And you do the same thing over and over again, well, baby, you're not going to have a good outcome. And life isn't all a bowl of cherries, as they say, and whatever conflict or anxiety or stress comes our way, if we analyze it and understand what the causes are and why we did this and that, we can then change ourselves to do a better job, to be, but you have to be consciously and have conscious intent and conscious awareness of what you're doing. And that doesn't seem to be our present culture set, because if that was true, Russia would have never invaded Ukraine, right? Because it has nothing to do with, the security of Russia, right? And they had many, many opportunities. Vlad came into power at the last days of Bill Clinton, right? And um, you can go, there's, plenty of history that a lot of people made plenty of books and movies about all of this, right? And he had many opportunities to basically fit in because he had a resource that Europe really needed: oil and gas and everything else. You name whatever mineral, whatever a good chunk of the rare earth minerals are in Russia, right? Gold, they have some of the largest deposits of gold, some of the largest deposits of diamonds and minerals, and definitely oil and gas, right? But you know, when after the fall of the Soviet Union, first of all, who brought the fields in Russia online? But Mr. Arm& Hammer. Who's the guy who put the technology in Stalin's Soviet Union? Mr. Koch, right? So, and a good chunk of Russia's oil is up there in the frozen lands where the permafrost is, and and oil comes out of the ground. There's a good deal of water, and part of when you see they have these refineries, part of the thing is to get rid of the water out of the oil and then to crack the oil into different hydrocarbons, into different esters, right? With different, octanes, right? And so, because you got kerosene, gasoline, and a whole bunch of other things, then you got all the stuff that you make plastics out of. And that's all thanks to Mr. Rockefeller and Mr. Rothschild, right? Because they wanted to hamstring and incarcerate the human race into an energy source that is not sustainable, right? And they talk about global warming and all of the above. The carbon footprint. Well, freaking carbon. If we didn't cut so many trees, I mean, plants love carbon, right? And really, what the Earth has always been is a ice ball. We've only had this Goldilocks period for about 60,000 years, give or take, right? And so we are about to have one heck of a Earth change. I mean, earthquakes, polar shifts, gravitational field changes. I mean, magnetic field, poles are flying all over the place. It used to move, like a few centimeters every 5 years. Now it's moving, 50, 60, 100 meters every week. They're having to redial, global positioning satellites all the time. I mean, and all this stuff is very, if I can see all of this stuff, and I don't even have a television or the internet or anything, it's pretty obvious. I mean, I went to a conference in '72 at Brookings, and John Hopkins put together of all these like heavy heaters from all over the world who were talking about the conference that was in 1891 when the world oligarchy decided to put the newly forming industrial world based on oil, right? And the money would be based on oil, not gold. That's why we have the petrodollar. Anyway, like I said, all this stuff's pretty obvious. And at the conference in 1972, basically it was said that, the powers that be had understood about how the earth works, right? And that the real world isn't the material world, it's this energy world. And if we were to ever let the humans understand this and have them realize that they can actually manipulate it themselves, you look at Gurdjieff, Ouspensky, Wilhelm Reich, Manuel Blavatsky, et al., Edgar Casey, these people understood this. They were actually navigating through all of this, and they were trying to bring a new world order, right? And it was hijacked by Rothschild et al., right? So we are right now, this year is going to be one of those really interesting pivotal points. Now, you would, you know, everyone was going on, oh, Y2K, we're all going to go back to Stone Age. And that didn't happen. The BBI sent me into the Devil's Highway, which runs from Asheville up to Stanton, Virginia, to look at all these cults that were going on about this and trying to manipulate that. And I stumbled my way through them all and basically found all these morons who were just rooting for the end of time so they could have their own little private, like in Zardos, have their little enclave where they would be God. And the most interesting thing I stumbled into was this up there near Stanton, this amazing guy who was part of the Theosophical movement at all. He was a true luminescent genius, and he had a facility called Swananoa, right up there on the Blue Ridge Parkway, right near Stanton. He was a sculptor. He was just, he was like Tesla. He could just go into state and see physics, right? But what he had that Tesla didn't have was he could paint and draw and sculpt, and he painted and sculpted, and he could write really well. Tesla, was just Tesla. But this guy, he really was connected to all our relations. And so his facility, Swananoa, I bet you if you go Google Swananoa near Stanton, Virginia, it'll pop up in his horror story. And I still have, so I stumbled into that place, early in the early 70s, late 60s, when I was a young lad getting my travel legs by hitchhiking around America and riding the rails with the hobos before container trains occurred. And all containerism did was to manifest a more unsustainable materialism. It quickened the death knell to where we are, right? Because Whitley Strieber's book, 2012, you should go read that, because it basically picks up right at the time of 2012, and everyone's waiting, just like they did bated breath for Y2K and the end of times, and 2012 came and no end of times. Oh, look, it's just ha, 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 ha. 30 years later, 2012, 22, 32, 42. And that's when the world is totally falling apart, right? And everything is, there's no more electricity unless you got it in your own enclave. Everyone's, it's like zombies are everywhere, and the world is falling apart. And the story is, this nonprofit, Mystery School, who's been around for 1,000 years, they've been preparing for this time, and they're not quite sure, but they've gotten a group of people who they think will help them get through it. And what happens is these kids, they were the what were the Calico kids, the Paisley kids, or whatever those special kids are supposed to be, who are the millennials. They get a group of them who had gone to a special school back in, the 2030s, and they show up and didn't I know you in middle school? And they realize as a group they can formulate and facilitate the opening of doorways that people who are ready to change can walk through. And that's what's happening right now. That's what these bubbles are. So you guys can walk through any of these bubbles and change your life. It's up to you. Let's see you do it. Anyway, so it's 1:09. There's two of you there, and I just wanted to touch base and say, hey, a show I did for 5 hours, I just got a thing saying, and like I said, the only thing that there could be any kind of thing about, oh, you played something that you shouldn't have. Because I remember being in a IHOP and the music over the stereo, YouTube said, oh, what, such copyright infringement, So the show that you better, if you want to watch this evening show that lasted 3 or 4 hours, you put it down a thumb drive. It might go away. Who knows? This show could just go away. Other people have. Look at Chris Hutchins. They just bopped him off in one day. Luckily for him, he's more capable and smarter than me. He documented every show he did. Me, not so much, because I'm doing these in a shamanic way, so they could take it off the World Wide Web, and it's still going to be there, right? So I'm not worried about anything, because I do this to serve love's co-creation of all our relations, right up my nose. So I'm going to say goodnight to you guys and say, be well, be safe. I'll see you later. I love you guys. Where's the little X? Right up here. So I think that this for an hour and 11 minutes and 11 seconds. I love it when that happens.